Autonomous motivation has to do with being motivated to do some activity because you find the activity interesting and deeply valuable for yourself. So you're there completely because that's what you want to do. You feel a real sense of willingness and volition and choice about doing this activity. Controlled motivation, which is another powerful motivator that exists, means that we're doing something because we believe we should. We feel an obligation to do it. We feel pressured from within to do it, or sometimes the pressure comes from other people. But anyway, the idea is that it really has to do with control, force, coercion, seduction. And so both of those are sources of motivation, but they're really very different, and people experience themselves quite differently when their motivation for an activity is one versus the other. The reason that they're important is because an enormous amount of research now shows that autonomous motivation leads to much better performance, and it leads to much better psychological and physical health. Whereas controlled motivation leads to poorer performance, less engagement in activities, and actually it has negative consequences in terms of people's psychological health and well-being. The issue about controlled motivation and the downfalls that are associated with it is that when you're being controlled, you're experiencing a lot of internal anxiety and internal pressure, and that comes out in a whole range of different negative psychological consequences. So really, controlled motivation, we've found, is a precursor of psychopathology. It's a precursor of addiction, for example, and so on. So there are very, very clear negative consequences relative to autonomous motivation, where the consequences of that are engagement, excitement, involvement in activities, persistence at those activities because they feel important to you, and the positive psychological and physical health consequences that follow from it. We find in lots of classrooms, whether we're talking about third grade or third year college, or even sometimes graduate school or law school or wherever it happens to be, we find that there's some teachers who believe that it's their job to make sure that the students in their class do what the students are supposed to do. And so they use every device that they have to try and make that happen. They offer rewards for it. They put a big emphasis on test scores, for example. They threaten punishments in one way or another. All of this use of coercion, of seduction through, and colloquially we often talk about that as a sort of carrot and stick approach to motivation. That's what really gets people into a controlled kind of place with respect to their own motivation. In terms of autonomous motivation, on the other hand, it's both somewhat more difficult, but also it's not so difficult if you get the right mindset. If you as a parent or a teacher or a manager, if you get the mindset of, I can really trust these people, I can respect these people who are my students, for example, and I really believe that there's a natural process in them that really wants to be motivated and engaged. And so what I have to do is not motivate them. What I have to do is support them in their own motivation. So that means if I'm talking to my child or my student, I want to begin by knowing how they see things. The typical approach is, I know how I see things and I'm going to use that on my child or my student. How about if you put that aside for the time being and ask them, what is it how do you see this situation? What is it that's important to you in this kind of a situation? And once you know that, you can have so much better conversation in terms of trying to support them and move them forward with whatever it is we're trying to accomplish here.